On this episode of Security Decoded, we're going to talk a little Super Bowl, and then we'll go right into our security topics for the week. We've got the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. Hey, they've all been hacked by the Chinese. Why are they doing it? What information are they getting? We're going to talk about Twitter. What about the exploitations that are out there now? We're going to talk some Android. Yes, they're affected too, and they're jumping to PCs. And finally, we've got Java. Lots of Java. Hey, we've got an exploit this week. John's going to break it down for us. And finally, we're all going to give what we like about our cell phones and what we wish they could do. Welcome to Security Decoded. This week's episodes, we have our security expert. We have Mike Myers and John Giebert. So I guess the first topic that we want to cover is the past Super Bowl. Did your team win, Mike?
I don't have a team.
No team?
The house team won. How's that?
Yeah, that's true. How about you, John?
No, my team wasn't in there, but the team I was rooting for did win, yeah.
Okay, how about the commercials? Do we have a favorite commercial?
I do.
have a favorite one to hate.
Mine's Paul Harvey. It just brought back a lot of memories. I mean, nobody has the ability of Paul Harvey. He's unique.
It was definitely a throwback, a nice tribute to farmers and the agricultural society.
It was a great commercial. I thought that the commercials were great this year because they actually had meaning to it.
Yeah.
So.
And what was your worst one, which is the one that you hated?
GoDaddy one. It was just gross.
You know, that was the least popular one, and I take offense to it because
I actually think they were doing it to get the shock factor out of it.
yeah.
That wasn't shock. That was just wrong.
I take offense. Why do they assume all programmers are nerdy? I mean, weren't you offended at that? I was offended at that.
It was more the sound effects to me. It was kind of
It was too graphic, maybe.
And the power outage, we know that they're blaming it on either one of two things, our favorite computer glitch or Bane. Either one of those two items, I think one of those. So that's the news item for the Super Bowl. Let's go to our security items for the week. The first one is that Chinese hackers are attacking the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. What data are they trying to steal?
That's a good question. They haven't really come out and said what they got necessarily. Just they know that they're there.
I almost think it was in response to the fact that the New York Times was basically trying to throw a story up a bit against the Chinese government. So, as Dennis said earlier, it's the Great Wall of China. You don't talk bad about it. They don't let it get out. And the fact that the New York Times was publishing information about some of the politics going on over in China, I think it was more of okay, it was a preemptive strike. They're going to get in to either strike back or to establish themselves in the network, so if this happens again that they're positioned. So I don't know so much if it was a data stealing, so much it was them pre-positioning themselves.
They did say they got passwords for all the employees and logged on and broke into and spied upon 53 computers.
Yeah. You know, they probably were looking for sources and any kind of preemptive information that might have been coming out.
There was one person who speculated they were looking for some of the articles they're doing about the manufacturers over there and trying to figure out who was the leak from the manufacturing stories. But again, that was just some way speculation.
Oh, looking for sources then for people who might be talking.
Who's telling about them?
Yeah.
So China tends to be very tight-lipped on their stuff. Any industry that tries to get in there, they have to meet their regulations. They have to meet their guidelines. They want to control the image of China. They can't control the New York Times, and I think this is their attempt, like you said, to find a potential source. You know, who's talking about China? If it's coming from within China, can they control that then?
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, getting their employees' passwords isn't that big of a deal. It's not like they tried to get subscribers' credit cards or something like that. You know, the data itself for most people was benign. So they're trying to do something internal. It seems like.
You know, over the past years, that many newspapers and news organizations have stopped covering international. It's all one big AP line from now on.
Yeah.
These are 3 newspapers that actually have large international bureaus. So I thought it was interesting that China would determine that we want to target these 3 because they're the most likely to be the new news organizations that are going to cover us.
I found it interesting that their initial breach was via email.
Yeah.
So. We always talk about phishing and don't click that link. And
Yeah, it's the low tech. Something that we talked about earlier. It's
I think somebody
easier.
predicted that on one of our episodes. Is that right, John? Did somebody predict that?
I think I heard it somewhere. It's easier to hack the human. I don't have to go through a firewall. I don't have to go through IDS, IPS. I don't have to pay somebody an extraordinary amount to write some kind of deceptive code. They just go straight after the user. And so, and you know, like I said, we'll see this more and more and more. It's the user vulnerability.
How do we think that the Times? How do we think they handled it?
They the New York Times try to get ahead of it. They like to say that they openly disclose everything, that they are objective and not subjective. So for them to just outwardly come out about it just follows what they do. It's a distribution of information. Why are they going to hide anything? They're out there. They hold the keys of the kingdom to inform the world of what's going on. So for them to try to hide their own breach goes against what they do at their own core. So following their own core values, I think they did the right thing. It is going to happen. You just have to be able to respond to it quickly. And their response was actually very good. They aren't IT professionals. They're a newspaper.
Quickly?
So,
they have it for 4 months.
Well, they're not even sure it was just 4 months.
They said yesterday they're still hacked. They're still being hacked.
Yeah.
So
and they had to go outside of themselves, which was smart.
Well, yeah.
So,
I mean, they're not a security organization. I mean, they surely have something inside security, but they're not like a security company.
So what do they do? What kind of measures do they put in place to stop it or detect it, or do they let them come in and try to detect it on the backside?
Oh. Well, no. I mean, that's why you bring in other company knows what to do. In this case, they're getting into the human element. You got to put tools in there to see them calling in and out, you know, some kind of inline device like a FireEye or something that's going to see the call outs. IDS would probably help. So I'm not sure what they've put in place. I mean, in your question about how did they handle it, you know, they've started pointing fingers at their AV vendor, which
everybody likes to beat up on the poor AV vendors, don't
which
they?
they mentioned by name, which you know.
I can defend them, the AV vendor, or I can defend New York Times, depending on how you want to pitch it. And everybody has their opinion, and it's all on your perspective. Was this malware? It was a phish. So phishing, it was a compromise. Yeah. So is there a malware signature to detect it? But at the same time, after you phish somebody, what do you usually do? Embed malware, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's your backdoor.
So, you know, it's
that doesn't mean that the AV vendor is going to detect it anyways. Not every AV vendor is perfect. I mean, the one you have you think is really bad probably because it's not catching things. But if you go to another vendor, you're going to the same issue. They're going to catch things too. I mean,
yeah, I did like how all the AV vendors kind of huddled together and said, "Hey, it's not that you have to have layered security."
That's right.
And if you're depending on your signature set, well, that's not really what it's for.
Right.
I did like how they brought in Mediant to help them detect, block, and then, well, let's hope that they purged them out of there. But Mediant knew what they were doing. They had already tagged this group. They call them China number 12.
Yeah, and that was kind of interesting too, because it was the Chinese was according to the New York Times, and they based that on past attacks by the Chinese military and some of the signatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, is this where they saw that they started at 8:00 workday in China 8:00?
I don't know if it didn't specify that. It talks about some of the methods they used. The constantly changing IP addresses, things like that they used were common to the attack from China.
Yeah,
and
fast flux, I believe, right?
It's funny because the China Ministry of National Defense has denied that the government had anything to do with hacking spree. Chinese laws, and it's in quotes, Chinese laws prohibit any action including hacking that damages internet security. The ministry told the Times last week.
I believe that is the same denial that they gave the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post.
So, yeah.
So the New York Times said, yes, we've been hacked. We think they did the right thing by coming out. And then, ironically, the Wall Street Journal says, hey, us too. And then the Washington Post, same thing. And then it turns out Twitter says, well, I better get in the act too. And Twitter has been hacked. They've had 250,000 accounts. John, you want to lead us a little into that about how they did it and what information did they pull out of it?
So basically, a hacker was able to penetrate their network, and once they were able to penetrate their network, they were able to gather things like personal information like username. They were able to get email address, session tokens, and also encrypted and salted versions of passwords, which are commonly taken on most hacks like this. So when people go after social sites, they're going to want things like usernames. They're going to want your passwords or salted encrypted passwords to eventually what they're going to do is they're going to work through that list, and they're going to be able to extract usable passwords out of it and compromise the account. They try to downplay it. They try to say, Well, we've seen this before. This is a common, they tried to lower the urgency to it. And they sent a mass distribution email to the 250,000 suspected users. So that's the thing, it's suspected users. They can't confirm the total number of users. So you run into a scenario where those 250,000 that got the email are going to be adequate. I think what they should have done was an environment-wide. We had a hack. There was a potential for, best practices, let's just get everybody to change your passwords. Let's just do a global distribution. You want to make
all Twitter accounts. For everybody has a Twitter account, they might want to get into the habit of changing out their passwords periodically.
Anything that's publicly facing, anything that's social, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, the new Google Meeting site. So anything that is publicly facing is a potential threat for being compromised. It is a good idea to not wait till something like this happens. You need to develop habits where just change your password on a regular basis. If it's publicly facing, if the public is watching what you post, if anyone can follow your update status, then they also have that access to your account to try to go ahead and penetrate the network. So it's just a good practice to get into, to regularly rotate your passwords. So,
now the passwords were encrypted, salted. Are we secure, or is there still a threat?
A salted password and encrypted password is much safer. I mean, it's very hard to break unless you know what the salt is.
Yeah, or unless your password is password.
Well, yeah.
Something in a
then I can't help you with that.
That's right.
So.
Or the username.
Yeah, the username. Yeah.
Yeah.
But by grabbing salted passwords, it's a matter of time. Anything is a matter of time, effort, and money.
Well.
And like you said, you'll have weaker passwords.
Yeah, I would think that a Twitter account wouldn't garner a lot of attention to the salted password. I think, as we were talking earlier, we said, well, you really want that email address.
Right.
So is it a good idea to have a fake email address or to change out your emails periodically as well?
Well, that's a pain.
Yeah.
Well, don't accounts offer you like throwaway emails now? So there's a lot of places where they say, in order for you to register for us or in order for you to gain access, we need an email account which exposes you to, a spam attack, a spearfish.
Yeah, I mean, my general rule with that is you create a separate account just for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so basically throwaway accounts. I think,
right.
and it's probably a good practice to do something like that. You don't want to tie everything into a single point of failure,
Right.
So,
Well, let's take a poll on our phones. What kind of phone do you use?
I have an iPhone, which you can hear.
Yes,
Sorry.
I can hear it. And what phone are you using now? You're using two phones, right?
I actually use two. I have an Android and an iPhone.
So you have an Android and the iPhone,
right.
and I'm sticking.
I'm an equal opportunity.
Yes. Well, you're not alone with the Android. The Android is the hottest selling phone, and in fact, worldwide, it is the most popular phone right now. Only in Great Britain and in Japan. I'm sorry, in the U.S. and Japan is the iPhone the king.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sticking, of course, with our Canadian friends, which is now called BlackBerry.
Yeah.
We don't have to remember that RIM is now BlackBerry.
BlackBerry.
But the reason why we bring this up is because we have a creepy new Android virus, which can jump from the Android. This is the first time that we've seen this. Jumps from the mobile device to the PC.
Right. And it's the first time I've heard of that. I've heard it going the other direction before, but I've never heard of it going from the phone to the PC, which is a little scary.
So we're in new territory now.
Yeah, we're definitely new territory.
And I think what's worse is it's these progressions. So now that I have something that can move from a phone or a mass storage device onto the PC, what about cloud-based? So I bet you the next progression is going to be, let me jump to the cloud.
Right.
Then I can jump to any device that you connect
any
to
of your
the cloud.
devices, at that point.
Yeah. So the security community needs to be aware of that. They have to have that on their radar. We've seen the progression of phone to PC.
Right.
Now it's probably going to be phone to cloud to any device that you connect.
Yeah. Now, when I was reading about that particular one, it said about it only works if you have auto run. So most new operating systems don't have auto run turned on. But if you're still running XP, you're obviously going to be at risk for that. So.
Yeah. And I think the other difficult thing though is we get very comfortable at work, where we'll deploy policies as a best practice to protect our user and to protect our network, and it's the home user.
Right.
So, there are several ways that you can go to protect yourself. You can Google it online to make sure that auto-run is disabled. We can offer it as a security 101 tip coming up in the future to help our users be able to disable things like auto-run to prevent malware from jumping from device to device. And usually malwares that move from device to device generally get categorized as a worm or worm-like behavior.
Well, the list of things that this virus can do was quite impressive. It can turn on your wireless. It can take your contacts. It can
send SMS.
Send SMS. Yeah.
Actually, it looked like what it was doing is it would broadcast SMS. Lots of different malware coming up. Would broadcast SMS as well. But
You're talking about the Bill
Yeah, I'm
shocker.
talking about the Bill one. Yeah. I'm jumping ahead.
Well, that one, we can talk about that one. That one actually goes back to our Chinese viruses. I guess they stay in the Great Firewall of China as well.
Right.
And they're having a large problem with that because they mostly use Android.
Right.
And they don't have the bigger controls that you would find outside the firewall of China.
Yeah.
And so it's called Bill Shocker because it actually bills them. So it sends out these messages.
Yeah, it runs the charges up.
See?
So let's see. I wonder who's sponsoring that one.
Are they legitimate charges?
Well, they're texting, so
Yeah.
every time they text you,
The
you
virus
get a
itself
text.
is texting out Bill
Yeah.
Shocker. So when you get your bill, you go.
Yeah, you send out 20,000 texts at
Yeah.
5 cents a piece or whatever, and
Ouch.
it adds up quick.
So and you got to worry about Android. They have quickly come onto the market. I mean, almost too fast for their own good. I was reading up on an article where they said over this past holiday season, in excess of 700,000 Android platforms were sold. Whether that's tablet or mobile phones, that's a large number.
That actually seems kind of low for the holiday
So-
period. I thought it was a couple million.
They said that they're dominating right now at a percent of 94 to 95% of the market, and that iPhone and Windows is fighting for the others, and then of course BlackBerry is trying to wedge themselves.
We're coming back. We're coming back.
Yeah.
Is back in, but
We decided to update the product after 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, Android is it is just taking over. I think what's happening is it's growing faster than its security.
You know, he asked me that question about the 94%,
Right.
and I said, "Oh, iPhone." And he said, "No,
Well,
no, Android."
Android.
One of those in our notes in here, I think it says that in the U.S. and in China, the iPhone still is the leader.
Japan.
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 Okay.
Yeah, China is definitely in Android territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's losing its grip. And Android is just
Now, I will say from a developer standpoint and a security point of view, Android's gotten much better. Each version that comes out, it's better and better. The problem I have with Android now is their store is not protected in any way. It's protected a little bit, but that's where you see most of the malware come from. In fact, I believe it was one of these malwares we're talking about was actually in the App Store, and they pulled it now, finally.
Yeah, well, they pulled it, but they're worried about it was the previous one, the one that can
Right.
actually jump.
So it takes them forever to find things. Like Apple, they sandbox it.
Yeah.
and
As I said,
it doesn't do something weird. They call you.
Droid Cleaner, and
That's it, that's what it was.
they
There was
removed
two
it,
of them,
but they're afraid it will come back under
A
another
different name.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest difference between Apple and Droid. I mean, other than platform open operating system, but it's where you get your apps from.
Right.
Apple has invested a lot of time and effort into make sure that anything it posts within their app store has been fully vetted.
Right. And the other thing with the Apple App Store is they in addition to tearing it apart is their apps run on the phone and they run in they call it a sandbox, but your data is really encrypted through the phone. I mean, if you pull the SIM out or anything like that, your data you can't get it anymore because it uses the PIN code.
Yeah.
That's in there for that. So that's something Android doesn't quite do yet. That's because it's manufacturer agnostic. So
Are they as tight on the code as they are with their OS systems?
yes,
Apple.
yeah,
Are they?
yeah, most definitely.
Well, our next news item is Oracle released a Java update earlier to address in the wild exploitations of a new bug. Didn't we do this last time?
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think we do this every week. I think.
Another.
Yeah,
So with Java, it's getting to the point where it's not necessarily a new exploit. It's just a long
continuation?
list. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a long list. So
It's like the NBA continuation play. It just
Yep.
keeps going.
and right now they're just in a total reactive state. And if Java does not change their practice and start to get proactive on their releases and try to basically hack themselves, they're losing credibility quickly. The United States government has already recommended that everybody disable Java from their devices because in the long run, you are going to be more secure.
So what you're saying is you should be hiring the hackers.
Right.
If it works, the hackers.
Well, they seem to be ahead of everybody.
It'd be a lot of money though. I mean,
So, but if you have a small select team that just you do a proactive hack against yourself. It's the same as running app scans against yourself before you put up an application within your own environment. While you run Nessus scans against your box, you basically try to hack your own environment to harden it. And right now, Java is not giving me the confidence that they're hardening their applications, that they're hardening their code. So, and you keep getting exploited like this, and you lose all credibility.
right. I had kind of hoped whenever Oracle had bought Java, they would put some more energy behind securing it up. So I'm a little disappointed they haven't.
Make it a usable app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's usable, but it's so open.
I just wonder if it's such a big beast right now that it's difficult to get its hands around.
Yeah, that's probably lots of data.
Well, this next news item is one in my area of expertise. A massive credit card fraud steals over $200 million worth of, or $200 millions funneled out to foreign banks. And I thought it was quite clever.
Yeah.
They, instead of taking other people's credit information and their info, what they did is created their own. They created bogus accounts.
Let's print your own cards.
And they built up their credit. So they'd have a higher credit line, and eventually they would just max out the credit and not pay them.
Right.
So is this a new wave? Is this going to be something to
Definitely.
take a
Well,
look
it does affect us ultimately because the credit card company's going to end up paying for this.
at? They can't
But it
always
It doesn't
override
affect
this.
my credit necessarily.
That's
so
right.
I don't prefer to do it this way if they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad they were caught, and they seem to have tracked them to the banks. But as always, the FBI takes their time, and they have to watch them for quite a bit until they gather but they're sure that they have most of the ring.
Did they notice, Dennis, that this was more at a local level? Was this seen to be an isolated attack, or is this something that, like Citibank or B of A, needs to watch for?
They were quite good about it. They were able to spread it around so you can't,
So a little bit here, a little bit there.
And the FBI had admitted, they said it was quite good, and if they had just been a little more cautious, a little less greedy, they may still be operating today. Yeah.
Oh.
So our next one, I believe we've talked about this too. The Rove, the members of Rove Digital pleaded guilty to charges of wire and computer intrusion. So this is the Estonia-based crime ring.
Right.
That we've spoken about in the past.
So
good.
let me ask you this question. I know how much we've all been involved with the fake AV.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy to hear that the programmer who wrote it, or at least one of them, has been captured?
This is what I hear. I hear this from some well-known professors. Is that there's an area in Eastern Europe that they all drive Ferraris, and it's the hacker capital of the world. It's like Silicon Valley was a few years ago.
But I think we're beyond that. So it's great news, and I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, hey, we're really involved in your security, that we're really interested in, that we're kind of looking, and it's as much as it's a difficult job to put something like this out in the public, I think tries to buy some reassurance. But it's the Steve Jobs. With the passing of Steve Jobs, did Apple stop? I think they did such a good job of getting a really good version of fake AV out there. And right now, it's not necessarily fake AV so much as it's ransomware. We're seeing a huge spike in ransomware. Once that base code has been flushed.
Right, and that's a whole other subject, scary subject actually. From you think about ransomware encrypting your data, and you got to pay to get it unencrypted. So it's a whole other subject, though, not for today's show.
No, but they'll pay for that code and they'll sell it, and then now everybody else has it. So catching the Rove Digital pleading guilty to this, it's almost a little too little, too late.
Yeah, and to Mike's point, okay, you brought one down. Well, there's probably another fella or another.
Yep.
Let's keep on going. I mean, that's another subject for another time as well, is how they make money. I mean, it's amazing. There's a whole economy behind this now. It used to be back in the days where they used to face things. It was people just having fun.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other week
and
discussion.
I've heard that the price of stolen credit card data has actually gone down because it's flooded the market, and there's other ways to make money.
I think I heard that's like $5 a person.
$5 a person
for more than information than you need to get a credit card. So.
Yeah.
So it's basically supply and demand.
Right.
There's,
supply and demand. All these people picking up data.
And then we have another one. Crooks netted millions in coordinated ATM heists that were timed to begin on Christmas Eve. This one will affect our credit.
This one will, and actually, I'm curious. I like to know how they did this because it just doesn't make sense. They had to have some kind of inside connection to get this to work.
Yeah.
So.
And the article indicated that they waited, that they didn't pull the trigger right away. They had the information, so they waited to Christmas Eve, and then they
Which makes sense because everybody's going home.
That's right.
Yeah, there's nobody around for the holidays, so what's the best time to do it?
And that's when we usually see a ramp up on most attacks, is during the holiday season. A lot of people either let the guard down or, like you said, they're just not there. They're not looking. So it's easiest. And it follows a lot of the holiday trends that we just wrapped up.
So the takeaway is check your debit accounts, check your credit card accounts for the next few months. And that actually comes from the FBI.
Yeah, and it says about it was they were using the prepaid cards. So somehow they got the credit up on those prepaid cards.
Yeah.
But can you imagine the guy sitting at the ATM for hours taking out money out of the machine? How many machines you got to hit to get $13 million out of it?
And again, that's what they do. They spread around so you won't notice it.
That just seems funny to me. I mean, somebody to pick that up somewhere.
Yeah. So the next article comes from our friends at FireEye, which we all like. So FireEye has discovered a new malware, and it's a sleeper. It sleeps its way into financial institutions. Why does it sleep?
I mean, the best thing to do when you first infect something is don't show you're there. So if FireEye sees you download something and you wait for that 10-minute period, whatever it is, it's going to stop looking for you. So if you sleep for a while and don't do anything, you're not as suspicious when you start talking out again. So that's their big thing is just do it quietly. And it's becoming a trend for malware to be slow. Low and slow is the way big people get in. That's probably what happened with the New York Times. They've been in here for 4 months.
That's exactly what happened to the
and they're just
New York
slow
Times.
at it. And it doesn't stand out on any kind of signal anywhere, so you just don't see it.
Yeah, and again, they used fastfox, which they rotated those IPs.
Right, so it just looks like normal traffic.
And it's network modeling. So much is, with the rapid progression of malware and so many new pieces of malware being written nowadays that you can't really do hash signatures. Hash signatures, you're getting signature bloat. We can't keep up with it, so you do network modeling. By going in and going to sleep, no one can model you. And you wait till they're not looking, then like what Mike says, low and slow, let me send a little here, a little there, a little here.
Now, we have both used the FireEye product, which we love.
I do.
Isn't it ironic that they found the sleep? We find that FireEye is very active in catching when it chirps up.
Yes.
Do you think it's because of the quality of the product?
It's FireEye's ability to sandbox anything that it sees. So if FireEye questions something or sees questionable activity, what it'll try to do is it'll try to see where the open handle is. It'll try to identify the file that has at least initiated the network session, and then it'll sandbox it. And by sandboxing it, it'll catch the sleep. And then it'll say, okay, I now have modeled you as having a sleep. So when you go to sleep, I'm going to still watch you. And because they modeled the sleep as normal behavior, increase their chances of catching the malicious behavior. And they're a great tool. I really have nothing bad to say about them. They really help us because of their ability to detect behaviors. Not signatures, but behaviors.
Our next article is another FireEye discovers a long-standing APT.
Advanced persistent threats.
Thank you. It's campaigning targeting the U.S. aerospace and defense industry. So even the U.S. government and the Times and Twitter, we're all having trouble keeping track of malware, especially something that's more sophisticated than we've seen before.
Yeah, and this one actually scares me a little bit because of who they were attacking. I mean, we've already heard about people getting in the middle of the drone communication and having it do things. Yeah. And here is maybe where some of this even came from, some of the information even came from.
State-sponsored, maybe?
State-sponsored, I'm sure. Or somebody maybe not state-sponsored, but hoping to be state-paid.
Yeah.
Yes. Get the information and go sell it somewhere.
Look what I can do. Look what I can do.
Right.
Look what I have in my hands.
Yeah.
And John, I believe this is your specialty here, Open SSL Security Advisory, including Lucky 13.
Yes. So what we found was doing a threat analysis was there was a new backdoor. But the backdoor was targeting more of a Linux Unix platform. So it was very OS specific. So once it was able to compromise the system and it was able to install itself on the system, it would open a backdoor. It would open up a second hidden communication. And by opening that backdoor, it did it through SSL. So what it tried to do is it tried to encrypt its opening. So, but would use OpenSSL, which is an open free source SSL application that anyone can pull down. So it wasn't that they created a new form or a new way to do SSL. They used an existing application like OpenSSL. But by establishing an SSL connection, they were trying to hide what they were communicating out. It's a neat trick, but it's an old trick. And there's a lot of ways to detect it, but you have to look for it. If you're not looking for it, you'll miss it. It'll go right by you. You will not see it. You have to be looking for something like
Now,
this.
I have SSL on my phone, on my BlackBerry. Could something like this be a vulnerability?
Not necessarily. This is actually more towards the Unix themselves. It was, I don't know if it was actually set Apache necessarily, but it was something that was on the Unix applications themselves. So it wouldn't be on your phone. You may get to see that if you're going to the server from your phone, but your phone itself is not vulnerable.
Okay.
Yeah. And what it does is it actually establishes an outbound communication. So, and it'll establish it through the SSL connection. And basically what they're saying is I'm here. I'm here, I'm in the box, and then it waits. And if you want to send it an update, if you want to send it additional malware, if you want to send it data stealers, and that's what it's doing. And so, but there are ways. You have to set your network up to look for this. You can't be blind to this. I mean, SSL has its legitimate purposes, and that's where you model your network. But if you're not looking for this, more than likely, you probably have one form of it on your network now if you're not looking for it. And you should be looking for it. And there are several different tools that can, one, either detect it, or you can just establish some simple logging through your routers to be able to detect this.
Now, our next article is there's a promises of a modest sum of $13,000 to anyone who breaks mega encryption. What is this all about?
So, are you all aware of what mega.com used to be?
I do not know.
No, I don't.
It was a big file sharing site. So it was actually the guy who ran it got arrested, and I think he's in New Zealand, and I think he's supposed to be extradited sometime soon. But they had a bunch of copyrighted material on it, so the government went in and shut them down. Well, he's now created a new sharing platform where everything is encrypted, and he can't even see what the data is. So supposedly...
He can't see his own stuff.
Well, no, it's not his data, it's your data.
Okay.
But the whole point is he can't tell what you have, so he can't be held liable for you putting movies up there for people to download.
Okay.
So now he's going out and saying, I will pay somebody if you can break my encryption.
So he's paying a hacker, really.
So basically, it's like asking a hacker, break me. Yeah. So the other thing is, in a kind of related article, and I maybe mentioned this last week, somebody who signed up for one of his new free accounts said, I found my password in the URL for the confirmation. So it seems like, okay, you encrypt your data, but it's in clear text for your password. So I don't know what the deal was with that.
So the next article is really interesting to me. The point of sale skimmer in a yet undisclosed merchant breach was used Bluetooth encrypted data to transfer data out of the skimmer. So, and this one is very tricky because it's welded.
Did you look at the pictures of that link? That was pretty crazy.
It's welded onto the board.
Yeah, it's soldered onto the board. I mean, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
It was definitely professional.
So,
doing that.
So we have the skimmer. Skimmer inside has a board, and then the chip is welded, and then it Bluetooths out to whoever uses the information out.
So my thing is
it's encrypted.
If you bought a legitimate point of sales product, how is this going to get into your system?
Well, that was kind of what I was wondering. I mean, did somebody go in and pay an employee to swap them out quietly? Same brand because it was a particular store they were targeting. So did they go in and pay somebody to swap out stuff like that? Or was one of the techs that was installing it? Or were they actually swapping out market and selling things on eBay? Like getting them, putting them on eBay.
Someone buying a repop.
I don't know. But it was interesting that they only had it in one set of stores. So it had been something kind of targeted. So, yeah. So you wouldn't know where it was because Bluetooth obviously can't transmit more than 30 feet.
No, it can't go that far. And if they detected it, I would have almost stayed quiet just to figure out where it was transmitting to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to find the device. It's another thing if you're just patient enough.
Yeah, but how do you find something like that? I mean, it's not like it looks like a normal skimmer because there's not like there's anything added onto the skimmer.
Yeah.
Like, you see people that have like the add-ons or the ATM machine skimmers and things like that. This looks like and is really truly the skimmer with an internal piece that's applied to.
It looks as though you have to swap out you have to make this, and then you have to swap it out.
Why would you swap it out? I mean, somebody had to be in on it.
Yes.
On the inside, I would think. If anything to go. Yeah. But it was pretty impressive. That's I hate to say it's impressive, some things like that, but it was.
Well, in the article, the FBI or the Secret Service said, that this was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
This is the second time I've read something like this. Just before the holidays, Barnes & Noble had found a few of their skimmers. Something had
like they had 600 stores or something like that, didn't they?
They had one in each store, which was even weirder.
And it was
kind of weird. It
was a distribution. It wasn't like local or within a region. It was a very broad distribution.
Broad distribution.
Which means
only one.
Somebody at corporate doing that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for our next one, I'm going to have to throw this one to you, Mike. Is it UPnP vulnerability?
All right, so you guys know what UPnP is? Or should I describe it?
Just go ahead and describe it.
Go ahead.
So when you buy a router for your home, it typically has UPnP on it. And what UPnP does is applications that you have or devices.
Universal plug and play.
Usually that's what it is, universal plug and play. So when you plug something in your network.
Got it. I know this one.
It basically tells your firewall, I want to talk on these ports, and I'm going to have things coming back to me in these ports. So it's just a communication protocol. And what it ends up being with the vulnerability is the Broadcom chip that's on a lot of routers actually has a stack flaw in it and actually allows it from the outside. So a company what's the name of the company? It was in here. Did a study on this. I'm sorry, going back up.
But doesn't the universal plug and play, ultimately what it does is it just basically lets it diagram your entire network?
Yeah, but for the most part. But what was happening on these routers is it's open to the outside, and there's actually a vulnerability in it that allows them to take remote control.
Yeah.
So I didn't write down the name of the company that did it, but they did a scan of the entire internet space, and they found 80 million devices that were responding to this.
To universal plug and play.
Universal plug and play on the public network. So that's a problem.
I think that our biggest downfall is it's all in goodwill. Someone's trying to make something easier on your life. Someone's trying to make something as user friendly that my father.
Right. And that's
who types with two fingers.
It's supposed to make it work without any action required on your part. It's designed to be that way. So I actually turn UPnP off on my routers, but that makes me have to go and put rules in my firewall to do that.
Yeah.
But there is a site, and I'll put it in the show notes, that at grc.com that they have created that allows you to go check your router. It's Steve Gibson's site. And you can go in and it knows where you're coming from. You click the button and it says if you're vulnerable or you're not. So it's something to go check, and I'll make sure that's out there.
So another tip to do some self-checking on the routers.
Yeah, it's quick too. It takes a couple seconds to do.
Well, now we come to our weekly main subject, Java. And you know how my eyes always glaze over when we talk about Java. John, do you think you could, to explain it, why we need Java? Why can't I just do what the U.S. government and Apple tells me to do, is just to disable it?
So what I know about Java is mostly what I learned through school. Mike is my coding expert. I really rely heavily on Mike when it comes to coding, because to me, coding is like foreign languages. You have the knack for it, and I don't have the knack. But Java was one of the foundations that we had to get while getting your degree, and it was one of the core languages. And what people don't understand is Java is actually a trade name. It's a trademark by Oracle.
Is that why we have that little A right
next to it? So people, they tend to forget that. They go, well, Java is synonymous with a programming language, when what Java is Java's a trade name, but it is a type of language. But Java is more than the language. Java, back in the day when it was made in 1995, progressed to Java Beans and Java Bugs, and now we have Java runtime environments. We have Java virtual machines. So Java is more than a language. So the origins are very steep. People don't realize that Java's been around for about 18 years now. And the reason why it's been around so long is that's the underlying technology that a lot of people use when they were programming things like utilities, apps, when they were trying to multitask online. So what it did was it speeded up your ability to surf or download. Several social sites use it now to make it easier to use your site. So to use Facebook, you need a Java component. To use
another product created to make life easier that has now been exploited.
Yes. And everybody says, well, why Java? And we talked about that earlier. If Java doesn't get ahead of this, they're slowly letting them, the hackers chip away at their credibility. So, why Java? Well, it's the king of the hill theory. Why so many viruses for Windows? Well, there are more Windows devices in a home than there are any other OS. Why Java? Because Java is so widely dispersed in the cyber community. It is deeply embedded in a lot of these fledgling programs where people are getting their degrees and they have to learn a core language. So they learn Java. So they go after what they know. You go after what you see all the time. You go after what you're comfortable. And it may start off as a sport that develops into, hey, I found a really good exploit that I might be able to sell. So it's not that Java is easily exploited so much as it's just under constant attack. Somebody that is very familiar with Java, it is an easy exploit. Java bypasses a lot of the security settings that are put in place to protect users. It'll write straight to the core of the operating system. So when exploited, it is a big exploit. And they start very shallow. So a lot of the exploits are least administrative privileges just to initiate the connection, just to get in and to be able to bring in the big exploit, the I'm going to give you a denial service, I'm going to shut you down, or I'm going to take over your machine, or I'm going to use it as my segue into an advanced persistent threat. I'm going to sit in there low and slow, and you're not even know I'm sitting around. But if it's that bad and it's that easy and it's that prevalent, then why do we need it? We need it because of the fact that somebody hasn't really replaced it with another acceptable product that does what it does. And I talked to Mike about this earlier, and Mike says that he and the United States government has recommended, and Mac has actually followed suit, and they said just disable Java. If you disable Java, you have no problem, which is true. But Java will come back and say, well, if you disable Java, you'll have no more Facebook. You disable Java, you can't do online banking.
Do we need Facebook?
My Facebook still works without Java.
Yeah, and I find that there are probably some workarounds, but I think it's a personal preference. I think it's something you need to test. Disable your Java and find out how big is this impact. And then, like you said, do we need Facebook? So is my impact to Facebook? Well, is it that much of an impact to my life that I can't live without Java? I'll let someone hack my computer. It's sad. It's just one of those. It's a status quo. Java is there, so they're telling you deal with it. Well, I don't think that's acceptable anymore. In today's society, where we are so integrated with mobile computing, with phones, with tablets, with computers, so grows the presence of Java. And I think something needs to happen, and that's why Mike was saying when Java was recently purchased, with Oracle, that he was hoping that we would get this change, that we would get that breath of fresh air, that somebody would say, okay, it's no longer acceptable to just react. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, when Oracle bought Sun, I kind of hoped that they would take some extra effort and put into it, but that hasn't really happened.
But as far as the vulnerabilities and exploits, as embedded as Java is, we'll continue to see it. And as we say a new exploit, as I say another exploit, as long as Java continues in its current path, then yes, we'll see this. And it just may end up where you may have to disable it. And it'll be for the greater good.
So we have so many legacy programs out there. What are businesses going to do that have legacy programs?
That's where we'll have to test. You'll have to, do coordinated shutdowns. Let's stop Java. Let's find out what the impact is going to be, and maybe the money that you reinvest to get away from a Java platform is less money than you'll lose when your Java platform is compromised. So, and we're still at that reactionary state. Everybody says, well, I haven't been hacked yet. I'm okay. Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling we're going to be talking about Java exploits next episode, too. We seem to talk about it. I think we should have a permanent space.
It's like a weekly thing. It should be
right.
Java in the
I think we're going to have to assign that one to you, weekly Java exploits.
It is, and it was interesting that it comes up so much nowadays, because I remember going to school and they said, you got to have this, you got to code in something, and it was object-oriented design. Java. You're using some compilers. So at the core level, I got 18, 19-year-old kids sitting next to me pecking at this stuff like it was nothing. I'm struggling. I'm fighting it. And they're picking it up like it's tying their shoes. So when you get a younger generation that it's been exposed to computers a lot longer than I have, and they pick it up faster, it probably is easy to exploit to them.
Yep.
So,
right. Okay, lastly, I thought we'd do something fun. We've talked a lot about phones and security in phones. I want each of us to say what feature they love their phone to do now, and what do they wish they see that their phone would do. Start with you, Mike.
Oh, that's putting me on the spot.
Absolutely.
I would like to see, and Mike actually did a segment on this on Security 101. I'd like to see more of a true AV console, not these little lightweight ones. The phones are legitimate operating systems. I mean, they're computers in your hand. It's amazing. I just think that, with the growing threat against Android, I think we need to see a true AV console. And not only an AV console on your phone, I would like to see an AV console that I can monitor from my computer that watches my phone.
So I can actually talk to that one a little bit because, I'm working on an MDM project. So in the last week, I've recommended 3 different antiviruses for Android. There is no really antivirus that I'm aware of for iPhone. But they are getting pretty sophisticated now as far as what they can do as far as management through MDM consoles. There's free one, like Touchdown is free, and it's great. It's really good. I'm actually putting malware onto the phone, and it catches it. So it's one of those things that they're getting.
But my wish list would be something like, and not to sell a product, please. I'm not endorsing a product. It's just the first that comes to my head. So say like Norton. So people have Norton, and so they have Norton on their PC, but they have like a mobile Norton that they can actually watch from a central console from their PC. So say I bring up my Norton console and say, hey, what are my scans on my PC? What are my scans on my phone? What do I need to patch?
I think they can do that now.
So
Norton is one of the ones I recommend. They have a free version. They also have a paid version. Yeah. So I think the paid version gets more enterprise type features.
Okay.
So if you're talking about personal, like you monitor it at home, that's still different. They don't do that yet. But as far as enterprise management, they're definitely getting there. Android's catching up with the enterprise management stuff.
Well, I want more integration. I want my phone to be a part of my home system, so I want to be able to turn my lights off whenever my kids leave the lights on. I want to get my phone, and I want to be able to turn off those lights.
I can do it for you now. I can turn all these lights off.
By phone?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll show you before we leave today.
See, Mike is already there.
Okay, but
Mike is always ahead of us.
What about the malware? When it turns off your light and shuts off your...
Well, that's it for this week, for this episode. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.